I can't wait to tell you guys about this next panelist. But before I talk, let me show you his video.
Camera,
Rolling.
action.
Pagbilang ng tatlo, isa, dalawa, tatlo, hanggang
Meet Anil Samkaramanchi, media influencer, motivational speaker, and powerful storyteller. Through every word, he champions youth mental health and promotes Hindu values with heart and humor. He inspires thousands to lead with culture, courage, and clarity.
So now I get to tell you guys about Anil. So I first met Anil more than 10 years ago because we went to the same undergrad, UT Dallas. He was a couple years older than me, so we had that Anna Tangachi vibe, so older brother, younger sister. And as you could tell by how he got applause before his name was even mentioned, he is super popular. He was super popular 10 years ago as well. And I know some of you may have 5,000 plus friends on social media, but I swear he has 5,000 plus real friends in real life. At UT Dallas, you could always see him in the middle of a circle of people just magnetized to him because that's how electric and captivating he was. And even though he had 5,000 friends, he always made me feel special because whenever I needed a ride to the bus so I could get from Dallas back to Houston home, he would always make himself available, and he also wouldn't let me pay him gas money. So the least I can do is thank him for his kindness 10 years later in front of hundreds of people. So please welcome Anil to the stage, my good friend.
An amazing introduction. And finally, for our last panelist, let's watch the introduction of an entrepreneur rooted in Hindu values.
Avani Modi Sarkar, co-founder of Modi Toys, turned a parenting challenge into a movement. From her New Jersey upbringing rooted in Indian values, she created toys and books that bring Hindu stories to life. Her work has earned her national acclaim. Named to the Forbes Next 1000 Inc. Female Founder 100 and honored as a Tory Burch Fellow. Through play, storytelling, and pride, Avani is helping kids connect to their heritage. She's not just building toys, she's building bridges to culture.
Making heritage accessible, one toy and one mantra at a time, please give a warm welcome to Avani Sarkar.
Last but not least, the moderators for this session are Madhavi Sirnani and Dr. Shabari Surendran. Madhavi Sirnani earned her Bachelor of Business Administration from the University of Houston and her MBA from Texas A&M, paving the way for her to climb into her current role as an accomplished business executive at her family-owned company. Madhavi spent 6 years in corporate before joining the family business, gaining experience in key account management and customer relations. Please give it up for Madhavi Sirnani. Next up, we have Dr. Surendran. Dr. Surendran is a pharmacist from Notre Dame and a postdoc fellow from Johnson & Johnson, currently working as a senior scientist in biotech. In addition to having an inspiring career, Dr. Surendran is also the National Director Board Lead for the Young Volunteers in Action, or YUVA group, within the Kerala Hindus of North America, where he spearheads both networking and community service initiatives. Please give it up for Dr. Surendran.
Hi, everyone. A very warm welcome to you all. As the organizers mentioned, we are on a time crunch, so in interest of time, I'm going to get the session started. So I want to again formally welcome each and every one of the panelists to this conversation. Thank you all for gracing us with your presence today. Before we get started, I just want to qualify, just one key discussion that we had in sort of the formative phases of this conversation, which was, what does it mean to be a Hindu youth role model? Do these folks, are they experts in the scriptures, or do they just ruminate on shlokas on command? So what does it really mean to be a Hindu role model, right? And I think the answer to that lies in the fact that you see all of these folks here who come from very, very different walks of life. There's, folks who have excelled in science, space and technology, entertainment, public policy, and entrepreneurship, all these different various walks of life. And, for them, what success looks like for each of these folks might be very different. But at the same time, how their role models are, in the sense that, they're role models in the sense that they choose to wake up every single day and better themselves and get to their definition of success, what that means to them in their field, using the Hindu scriptures, gaining strength from our dharmic traditions, using that as a guidebook to better themselves every single day. So again, without further ado, I'll have my co-moderator, Madhvi, kind of go over the rules and structure of this discussion.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, like Shabri said, thank you so much for taking your time out, and thank you to the panelists for taking their time to come and speak to us today. We have about 40 minutes on this panel, so we are going to be asking each panelist a question that's catered towards the Hindu youth, how they have used their Hindu dharma and every aspect of their life, their career, like Shabri mentioned. So we're going to be giving them each a question, some time to answer it, and then we will also be giving you, the audience, some time at the end, if permitted, to ask them some questions as well. And I will hand it over to Shabri to just walk through that Q&A really quick.
No, thank you. Thank you, Madhvi. So, as I mentioned, this is very much a conversation, and as Madhvi mentioned, this is really a give and take, and it's really about us learning from them as much as, them learning from each other and them learning from you guys, and it's a mutual conversation. So I know you guys have heard a lot from Kavya earlier at the leadership session. So I want to ask her something different. I know she covered a lot about her upbringing, her sort of aspirations about, using Dharma as a guide to go, or a North Star, if you will, to go into, your interest in space. So I want to ask you, you touched a lot about inner transformation being sort of your guide to kind of ground you to meet these challenges every day at the workplace or in personal life. So, just candidly, I wanted to ask you, when did you know, or how did you know that you were truly transformed and you were ready to take on these challenges? And how did you get to that place? What sort of milestones did you use in your dharmic journey to gain that strength? And how did you know that you were ready to meet those challenges?
Kamcha. Namaskaram, everyone, once again. That's really a loaded question, and to say that I've transformed, I don't think so. It's a journey, right? And my answer may not be straightforward, but I will say that whether it's outer exploration or inner exploration, it's a journey, which means you're actually seeking for something that you do not know. But if you've already made conclusions that I've transformed, the whole point is lost. That said, how, the milestones or things that you know that you are transforming or you're on the right path, at least for me, is something on the lines of, that you're not reacting to situations, but in turn responding to it, which takes a little bit more inner clarity and thinking. Moving from compulsions to conscious thinking or actions. We are always, driven by our compulsions. And moving from personality to presence, which I mentioned at the leadership panel. And one of the other things to me is as a leader or a young role model, or even in a daily journey, I think when you start to notice that you're less of yourself in order to put others in front of you and for their well-being, I think that's when you start to see things with a different perspective. And what I learned from my guru and what I learned from my little one, a 5-year-old, is when I look into her eyes, she's an infinite possibility. So I know we are all limitless. But at the same time, it's not about you. It's how you handle yourself in these situations. But when you look at it from a point of, can I not just be a mother to her? Because when I look at her, she's my daughter, and I want her, to be a certain way or want to nurture her. But can I look at everyone as a mother? Like, can you be a mother to the world? I think when that change, you start to notice. I feel I'm still on the path of seeking and exploration. So to me, that has changed my perspective, and I know that there's something beyond just yourself. And in the process of like seeking, I just want to take an analogy: is when you plant a seed, you're not thinking about the flower, right? What it needs is nurturing. It needs the right soil. It needs nurturing on a daily basis. And flower is a consequence. The fragrance of a flower is the consequence. And I believe each one of us have that seed within us. It's how you nurture it and the daily dedication and commitment that it takes. So by no means I'm transformed, but it's learning and exploring every single day and taking moments every day to witness yourself and take that time. And that's why I keep, I'm a scientist, so I love to experiment on things, and I've experimented on, doing meditation from a scientific standpoint, and I've actually seen evidence of it working. And I would love for everyone here, and even the youth, go experiment with that meditation app and see changes within yourself. It may not be fireworks outside, but that transformation happens slowly on a daily basis.
Thank you for that. And I think just a quick follow-up to that. I think one thing that touched me from your sort of answer to that was, I think you were mentioning kind of taking it as a journey, right? Going about it step by step. And I think one thing I caught in the previous panel that you were in as well was, talking about not owning the result, but owning your work. Like work as worship, that sort of a thing. Like you go up a summit, you go step by step, right? You don't think about, getting to the summit. So I want to ask you and also the other panelists, how has that, kind of affected you and that ideal? How has that influenced you, attain your definition of success?
Again, I think when you have a goal or you want to achieve something, and we're constantly thinking about it, having one eye on it, it means you've lost one eye in the process of wanting to achieve it. And you're lost the capability you have now to focus on the thing that's ahead of you in order to get there. So for me, again, it's been a journey where, yes, I may have some dreams, we all may have some dreams and goals, but unless you focus on what's ahead of you and constantly reminding yourself whether you've given your 100%. And I want to share that a lot of people say, oh, how do you don't you ever rest? And I tell them, yes, I'll rest in peace when I have to rest in peace. You have this really short moment that's called life, and we don't know what's before that and what's after that. But if I'm not going home and sleeping thinking, okay, I've given my 100% today, it's time wasted, and time and energy are non-renewable resources. So it's focusing on what's in front of you is more important than focusing on these grand dreams, which drive you, by the way, to what you're doing today.
Thank you. Anyone else have any reflections to share?
Yeah, I have a little bit with that. Where working in policy, one thing I had to learn really quickly early on is that the goal that you might set for yourself is not the goal that you're going to get. Where this last session, I spent the entire time advocating against a specific bill. Unfortunately, it passed, and my next step is now helping plan a lawsuit or trying to figure out the next steps after that. So if I just set that first goal, let me stop this bill, once I got that failure, you can quit, you can turn around and say, okay, I have to figure something else out now. But if you focus on the journey itself and what you can learn during that, and then using those skills later on, whatever way that it comes up. I think, like you were saying, just keeping one foot in front of the other and focusing on what's directly in front of you and what you can do about that.
Thank you, and I'll hand it over to Madhvi now.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So, Anil, we're going to transition this to you and ask you a question. So, we wanted to understand from you, what does the Hindu story and representing this Hindu experience mean to you? And what motivated you to use social media platforms to discuss and celebrate your Hindu identity?
Sabaya Namaha. Subchat. So, as the Indic fold has been a very ancient civilization, we've been around quite a bit, and we needed a means of communicating the knowledge that we've had. And obviously, the place that I got pointed to was the Upanishads, right? Vedanta Nama Upanishad Pramana. The essence of the Vedas are the Pramanas provided in the Upanishads. So when I started reading them, what I ultimately realized is these are dialogues between two characters, sometimes named, sometimes unnamed. And then I read the Bhagavad Gita, which also begins with a character name and then a dialogue and another character name and another dialogue. And then I read a script for a movie, and it had a character name and a dialogue and a character name and a dialogue, and I was like, how about that? That's a little consistent. So I started interpreting why we chose art form. Why did we choose song? Why did we choose bhajan to express ourselves? And that, it's the packaging. The human mind loves rhythm, layam, these artistic elements, and we chose to take dry data and apply it to creative arts. And we taught morals that way. For example, one of my favorite astronomical stories is the story of Dhruva Maharaj, and that was the star Tuban at the time, the North Pole star at the time of the story. I loved the fact that we could take astronomical events and convert them into phenomenal stories. And there were so many lessons. The theory of relativity makes it into the Puranas as well. There's so much academic insight which we chose to do through those versions of those stories, which unfortunately now isn't as accessible. So what my work is the exact same reasoning. Let's take what we've taken to be philosophical truth and convert them for the time and the people that work here now. And social media just happens to be the easiest way to get out there, right? Like, we remember early days of YouTube, right? We remember the cat videos and all that. That's what we all consumed. But now on social media, what's really cool about this is I can post a video about philosophy. I can quote, all of the Shastras and Sutras, and that's good for one audience. And then another audience is going to want me to act it out. And so I choose to do various different kinds of content because now the algorithms for social media will just take each type of content and send it to its intended audience. So my job just got significantly easier, and I'm just following the same sort of reasoning.
Yes, please applaud them. That's amazing. And you said something that stuck out to me. I want to ask you a follow-up question. You mentioned that you picked up, these Vedas, the Gita, to read. We have a lot of youth in the audience. What motivated you to pick that book up, to read it, to actually implement it in your life?
So, I was a very angsty teen, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life at a certain point. And, it's really easy to just kind of hear your environment say, oh, go be a doctor, which I studied pre-med neuroscience at UTD, so there's that. So I was studying to be a doctor. I had all these questions about consciousness, and then I went to my doctors from UT Southwestern Medical, and I was like, hey, I got a couple questions about what is consciousness. And they replied to me, and I kid you not, they go, these are really good questions. We don't have the science to give you an answer. And I was wondering, why am I paying you then? It doesn't make sense. So that's when I fell in love with going back to the Gita and the Vedas, because again, we are a very, very old culture. We started asking these questions a long, long time ago. And the answers are there, but it's a matter of unpacking it and really studying it. But the benefit of doing that study is how then do you apply it best, right? In the Western academic sphere, you begin your life in academia as a bachelor, you go to master's, then you become a doctorate in philosophy within a certain field. In the East, you start at philosophy. Then they ask you the question, how do you best interpret this philosophy? And some people are like, oh, I understand through economics. They become Arthashastra students. Or some people are like, I want to do it in performance. They become Natyashastra students, Natyaveda. Some people have different other things. Cool. I wanted to be able to do that. And for me, doing media and creating whatever my expression of rasa was at the time, whether I wanted to make comedy or drama, that just made the most sense to me. So it was studying the philosophy. It made sense to me in the form of TV shows, movies, and I just went into that. That made the most sense.
Do any of the other panelists want to add to that question?
Yeah, I can definitely relate to what you said about packaging, right? Like, it's really important, and I can relate because what we do is we create Hindu-inspired plush toys, right? And when you think about kids, right, what is the one universal language they all speak? Play, right? And so it doesn't matter what your background is, where you come from, all kids understand how to play naturally, just innately. And so when you think about taking something that's 5,000 years old, how do you kind of reimagine it? How do you repackage it for today's youth? And not just today's youth, I mean, really, you take any child from any century, right? And so that's essentially what inspired us to create Moti Toys. How do we sort of bottle up the essence of our parents, what they've tried to teach us and ingrain in us from the time that we're born, but do it in a way that feels playful and fun and accessible, not just for the kids, but for the parents too, right? Who we're speaking to is not the boomer generation so much. It's really people in my generation, I guess the millennials, and the future Gen Z parents, right? Because with each generation, we become that much more removed from our parents' generation. And we recognize that we don't necessarily practice religion the way that we grew up seeing it being practiced. We know that attendance at temples around the world is really on the decline. So how do we keep our kids still somewhat connected to their Hindu roots in a way that feels authentic, still respectful, but we're speaking it in their language?
No, thank you, Avni, for that. I think that kind of like was a really organic transition to kind of, me wanting to know more about your story, because there wasn't, I think I shared this with you privately in one of our calls as well, that, we actually heard about your company long before I even got to know you. We were actually visiting a family friend's house, and we saw a Krishna plush toy. And then we saw a Ganesha plush toy. And then it was just really cool that the kids were really bonding with these toys like they were characters in their story. And, I remember telling my wife that, like, this is a really cool idea, like to bring culture, make it so accessible to kids. So, I want to ask you, like, what is your origin story? Like, what inspired you to kind of sort of integrate cultural learning and dharmic principles to create Moti Toys? And, how do you think your faith was kind of providing you that confidence and strength to draw from? And I know like the market might be niche, so what inspired you to take on that challenge, and what was your conviction?
Yeah, so the journey really began 8 years ago when both my brother and I became parents for the first time. So fun fact, my daughter and my niece are born exactly 1 week apart. So although my brother, who's my co-founder, is 6 years older than I am, we both became parents the same time. And I actually have another sort of a side tangent story real quick. My grandfather, who passed away many years ago, I remember my mom kind of nagging him. This is before like my brothers and I were married. And it's like, when are they gonna get married? When are they gonna have kids? Like the typical like questions. And I remember my grandfather, who studied astrology and read palms and all that stuff, he said to my mom, it's like in regards to me and my middle brother, oh, they'll get married together, they'll have kids together, they'll do everything together. And of course, this is like, long before we had found our significant others. And it didn't make sense to me because I was like, well, how could that be? We have a 6-year gap. And then I looked back and I was like, wow, like this was meant to be, I guess, right? Like, and when we talk about dharma, our purpose in life, and I feel like why were we, my brother and I, why were we chosen to be in this role? Like, we're not even from, like, we don't live in India, right? We immigrated here many, many years ago, And anybody could have thought of this idea, like, because so many of us are grappling with this, right? How do we raise our kids to feel connected to their Hindu culture? Anyone in India, anyone in the UK, anyone in Canada, anyone could have thought of this idea, but like it came to us specifically. And it came to us in a time when, you know, my brother and I were kind of going through this like life transition together, becoming parents. And I should also note that we have an older brother, so we've been an aunt and an uncle for far longer than we've been mom and dad. And it never occurred to us at the time when we were aunt and uncle, like, oh, how are we going to raise our niece and nephew with this, like with these values? It only dawned on us when we became parents, when we realized that like we are the ones responsible for shaping their lives and their minds and their values. So that's really when the idea came to us. And you know, we didn't really have a game plan. There was no business plan. Like, there was no formal playbook. There was like no really formal discussion. It was more like, let's just kind of see where this goes. And we start off with a really small set of inventory. And, you know, before you knew it, we launched and we sold out within a matter of weeks, which told us that, okay, we're not alone. There are thousands of people out there who are seeking the same kind of connection in a way that speaks to them, right? I mean, there will always be a need for temples, there will always be a need for Sunday schools, there will always be a need for all of the great work that everyone is doing. But I think it just goes to show that people are still looking for more tools and more resources. And of course, you know, we've never made the claim that our toys and books are the end-all, be-all solution, right? But it is definitely a tool in your arsenal, right? And if you're going to pick up a toy, why not just pick up something that's actually meaningful, something that's actually rooted in your culture? And so really that's why we're here and we do what we do. And if it happens to inspire people along the way, then that's just sort of like the cherry on top.
Thank you. And I have a really quick follow-up to that. So, you know, it's interesting because you mentioned how toys are universal. You know, today, like, we live in a very screen-obsessed world, right? You and your brother could have gone and started another, you know, 12,000th app that teaches kids Indian culture, because there's so many of those, right? Even I remember a couple months ago going to a friend's home, and their son was, they're not reading Amar Chitra Kada on, like, they're reading it on an iPad now. So, you know, was it a conscious decision for you to go back to something tangible, go back to something that the kids can, you know, bond with, and you know, on a truly like touch-based way? Like, well, because now, like, that's what the experts are telling you, like, you know, reduce your screen time, you know, let your kids play with toys, you know, let your kids be kids, not, you know, computer scientists on an iPad. So was that a conscious choice?
Yeah, absolutely. Really, it was for two reasons. One, because you know, if you go to any child's home, especially a newborn, the two things you'll always find: a plush toy and a book, right? No matter where you go in the world. As a matter of fact, when my daughter was born, when my dad came to visit us, he stopped by the hospital gift shop and picked up what? A plush toy, right? So it's like the sort of the go-to. And the idea was that, you know, there are all these plush toys that when you squeeze your belly, they sing nursery rhymes and ABCDs and stuff. Like, well, why not have a toy, again, that's a bit more meaningful? And the other reason was, yeah, you know, we wanted to keep it really simple. Like, listen, we don't come from a toy background. We don't come from an entrepreneurial family. We don't have any business being in this business. But we went into this completely blindly, and which is good, because I think if we knew too much, we would have probably talked ourselves out of it. But we wanted to kind of start with the minimal viable product, was like the easiest point of entry. And at the time, plush toys seemed basic enough, and they're not, but in a way they are and they aren't. And I think if we had if we had put too much thought into it and like, okay, well, what if we did this? What if we did that? Like, we probably would have talked ourselves out of just even doing it. So at the time, a plush toy seemed like the best idea, just given that it's something that's commonly seen across all households, and also make religion that much more tangible. Like, you know, we wanted kids to know that it's okay, like, you can have them at arm's length. You can go to sleep with your plush toy. You can talk to him. You don't have to wait for Diwali or Ganesh Chaturthi, like, to have this like special, like, you know, bonding time. And really that's what it's been about. It's about, you know, still remaining respectful, but also giving them a friend. And I see that playing out whenever, in my own home, whenever I talk to customers, and that to me says like, okay, mission accomplished.
So we're going to transition to Nimai, and then we'll hopefully have some time for them to ask you all questions as well. So Nimai, as a legislative advocate for Hindu rights in Texas and a community organizer for Hindu education equity, what inspired you to dedicate yourself to these causes? What was your motivation to come to this point?
I think that one part of my experience that is ultimately kind of rare is that I was one of the only Indian and one of the only Hindu students in my school forever. I knew every Indian and Hindu student at my high school. When I was in elementary school up until 4th grade, there was not even another brown kid of any type, no South Asians. And so a lot of what my understanding of Hinduism came from is explaining it to other people, explaining what my beliefs are, why my food might look a little different, why some days I might come to school wearing a bracelet or a special necklace, things like that. And then when it came time to find something to do between college and law school, I knew that education was something really important to me. Because when it comes down to it, that is going to be how most Americans view us. It's what they learn in elementary, middle school, and high school. It's what they read online. And if we don't take control of those and kind of show what our beliefs actually are and not let them draw the lines from Indiana Jones and The Simpsons, it can be really powerful. So going into elementary schools and middle schools and introducing curriculum has been something really powerful to see. And how excited teachers are to represent their Hindu students better. A lot of these teachers, they know that there's issues with the curriculum. The main thing is that all of that is controlled by the state government and by school boards. And so unless you're advocating with them, making sure that your ideals are in legislature and that there's also a grassroots movement behind it as well, you're ultimately not going to get anything done. You can send as many letters as you want, have as many meetings as you want, but you need to have almost like an attack on all fronts, where you're going to be there in their email inbox, you're going to show up for meetings in their offices, you're going to have people show up to school board meetings, you're going to have students go to their teachers and say, hey, I would really appreciate if we updated our curriculum to include this. And so with policy, I've found that the main way to approach it has been keeping those values of Hinduism that I have, of freedom and pluralism and equality, and bridging those with the American values of pluralism and equality, and introducing that to legislators where, when their ideas of Hinduism are still from Indiana Jones, this is what Hinduism actually is. This is what we actually do. We are Americans, where just as American as you, just as American as our neighbor, and we just need our representation to be a little bit stronger and a little bit more accurate. And so I think the greatest part of the experience has been meeting with other people who share those views, whether they're Hindu, whether they're Christian, Muslim, Jewish. There's so many people who have helped us in our policy making. We help them in their policy making, or not policy making, but advocacy work, more accurately. And so having that experience and the Hindu view of our paths are different, but ultimately we're all going to the same place. We have the same end goal. What can we do to make that happen in our real life?
And I want to ask a follow-up question, and then after Nimai, you answer, the panel's open to answer as well. You mentioned something in the beginning of the panel as well about how you were advocating for a bill, it didn't go your way. For the youth here who's going to make goals and try to achieve those goals, what keeps you going? What keeps you motivated, especially in this space? And then we'll open it up to the panel as well.
I think one large aspect of that is that war on all fronts, like I was saying, where even if there's a bill that doesn't go through in state legislature, we had more success at school districts, or we had greater success at the federal level. So focusing on that and keeping in mind that progress of some type is still progress. And sometimes that might just be having a conversation with a principal at one elementary school to explain what Hindu students are going through at their school. You can change those lives. While it might not be a statewide effect or a national or international effect, there are still people whose lives have been improved by your work. And so focusing on that and doing what you can when you can has been a big driving motivation for me.
And before we go, I want to just ask you for a 10-second response. What's one actionable item? We have a lot of folks here in the community. What's one actionable item that we can do to show up for our community in Texas right now?
So we've done a couple action alerts. The legislative session unfortunately just ended, but if you haven't heard about it, the Bluebonnet curriculum has been created. It's not the most glowing portrayal of Hinduism, I would say. And is now at the school districts to decide if they want to adopt it or not. And so when families from that district who have students in that district, who have interests in that district, when they show up, go to the school board meetings and tell them that this curriculum doesn't represent our interests, isn't going to equip our students with what they need to be successful people and successful Americans, they'll really listen. So going to those school board meetings, this is the time now before the school year starts in August and September to make our voices heard and really get concrete change.
Thank you so much. And I want to open it up to the rest of the panels as well.
You asked what keeps you going. So just to touch on that, for me, it's now that I see the world through different eyes from exploration standpoint, space exploration. So in that aspect, for me, we at NASA or any of the space agencies, I don't feel like we are limited to a box of identities. We are working for humanity, and my goal has been, at least it's morphed over the last few years, especially anchored in spirituality, is if I could leave this world at least 1% better for the next generation, that's like a responsibility for me. And this stems from Hindu, our Hindu dharma. Like every avatar of our deity that we've seen, they come here to make the world a better place. And so that's what drives me. And I know I do get questions about science and spirituality, and I know it's contradictory to talk about rockets versus rituals and data versus devotion and logic versus faith. But when you've given yourself completely and think about, we've had this platform, and how can I leave it at least 1% better? And especially, I think you will relate to it, and everyone who has kids relate to this. Like, can we make this world a better place than we've come? And a lot of our Hindu scriptures just talk about that, and that's what drives me.
Yeah, I'll just add that, we designed these toys for kids. Like, that was what our intention was back 7-8 years ago. But we have heard from NICU parents, IVF couples, cancer survivors, people who say that our toys really gave them a sense of healing, hope, comfort, and joy. We never imagined that happening, right? So when I hear stories like that, that's what keeps us going.
What keeps me going is you only lose when you stop. Like, that's just a fact, right? If you don't stop, you're either going to succeed or you're going to learn. Those are the only two options you get, right? And I started doing arts when I was younger. I played the violin for 6 years, mridangam for 3, dance for 7, acted for over 10. I just don't stop. And as long as you do that and you love what you do, you get to wake up and do what you want to do, you're good.
So I think we were just informed that we have very few minutes left, so we're gonna have to cut short the Q&A, but we do have interactive sessions later today. We have a speed interaction session and then also a detailed interaction session later today where you can speak to all the panelists and get their perspectives and get your questions answered. So thank you all. It was an amazing conversation.
Let's give them a big round of applause, you guys.
Yeah, please, let's give them all a big round of applause. They've really taken time out of their day to come and have this conversation with us. Thank you.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you all.